Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Welcome to the program. Rupert Murdoch says he's stepping down. Big deal. He's giving the reins to his equally odious son. So nothing changes. And if you think that SOB of jerk is going, the son, the father, is going to really step aside, be the kid in that regard. Anyway, yeah, a man who has done more to destabilize democracies around the world. Ask the Australians, the Brits, Americans. This awful human being. Unbelievable. Nothing will change. They have a business model. It's taking down democracies. God. Speaking of taking down democracies, after telling you yesterday, don't believe a word I say. I told you yesterday that in terms of self-preservation, I would not watch Merrick Garland's hearing with the House Judiciary Committee, since it would be a circus and a circus. That's all. And I asked us to think about him because I couldn't imagine how difficult it must be to sit there and listen to their crap and their lies and their accusations and their efforts to sow mistrust in major institutions like our Justice Department, all in hopes of destabilizing our democracy. Somebody put it, which is to say, I, of course, watched later in the afternoon. I ate some lunch. I watched. I got indigestion. I got so angry I couldn't see straight. They are the most vile. I forgot who wrote this. Write it down. But he's got it right. He says the GOP is not just, missing in action, producing nothing. They are actively working to bring our government to its knees. I mean, think about it. It is absolutely true. We're facing another potential shutdown of government because of them. We're facing national security concerns because of them, the block of military promotions. All they do is obfuscate and destroy. It's their mission. Destroy reputations, destroy institutions. This person goes on to say the absurdity of their impeachment effort of Biden based on no evidence whatsoever. And the clown show of the Judiciary Committee yesterday are what Republicans do because they can't govern. They have become media. What am I saying? They have become media personalities, elbowing each other for screen time. You have to outrage the last outrage. You have to keep upping the ante so that we're in the state we're in. All of this, rather than uphold the oaths these awful human beings took. to protect and defend the very nation and Constitution they are trying to destroy. And this guy points out that that hearing that I watched yesterday was just another one of the sideshows that shows that they are picking up, the GOP is picking up where the insurrectionists on January 6th left off. They are attempting to block the government of the United States from doing what it constitutionally is expected to do, and to protect and to serve the people of this country. My God. I don't know how Garland, I feel for him. If I were his doctor or his loved one, I would have been very concerned. I mean, I would have burst a blood vessel. I would have gone berserk. Did you see the guy who actually, I think he asked him, do you hate Catholics? Oh, do you think Catholics are domestic terrorists? That's what he said. And Garland looked at him like, are you, and he managed not to say, are you fucking nuts? God. Oh, they're just the most shameless bunch ever. Case in point, Cassidy Hutchinson, do you see she's got a book out? Cassidy Hutchinson, who was in the Trump White House, working right alongside all of these wonders, Mark Meadows and Don Eastman, Rudy, all of them. She was right there. Thank God, for whatever reason, she decided to tell the truth. And she's got a book out. And here's a little wondrous, salacious bit. And I believe this is on January 6th. So she's desperately running around looking for the guy she works for, the obviously loathsome, spineless Mark Meadows. And she says, Rudy, I'll quote her now, he put his hand under my blazer, then my skirt. I felt his frozen fingers trail up my thigh. He tilts his chin up. The whites of his eyes look jaundiced. My eyes dart to John Eastman, who flashes a leering grin. I fight against the tension in my muscles and recoil from Rudy's grip. Filled with rage, I storm through the tent on yet another quest for Mark Meadows. Does that surprise you? January 6th. People will die. The nation's capital will be assaulted. People will fear for their lives, understandably. And Rudy's copping cheap feels. And Eastman is grinning. My God. Oh, God. I mean, that makes your skin crawl. One last thing on the dress code thing. Fetterman did tweet something regarding it yesterday. I'm sure he's retweeted more than one thing. I don't know. But he said this. This is from the official account, Senator John Fetterman. If those jagoffs in the House stop trying to shut our government down and fully support Ukraine, then I will save democracy by wearing a suit on the Senate floor next week. Now, if you laughed at that, I get it. I didn't laugh. I groaned. I groaned. I frankly don't want my senator, however clever he might be on social media or whoever handles his social media. This is not why we elect people to represent us. I mean, I get the point. He's saying, you're so concerned about how I dress. You want me to dress well? Then, stop loving the Russians and help the Ukrainians. But it just shows how, I don't want to get back into it. And I thought yesterday, I was thinking, I should write him a letter as a constituent and tell him how unhappy I am that he has become a distraction in this regard. He's been through so much, but all of this crap, his grunge outfit, it's just, I don't know. I come from a different time. It was a more serious time in some ways, though we shouldn't pat ourselves on the back. Whatever it was we did, it brought us here. I don't know. So much to get to. This is the last day of the week for me, and I must tell you, I will not be here on Monday. Monday is Yom Kippur, the Jewish day of atonement, and in that regard, I ask forgiveness from any of you whom I have offended or hurt in the last year. There's no way you can do what I do, which is talk off the cuff for an hour and not inadvertently offend and hurt people, certainly disappoint them. I don't know if I'm supposed to apologize for disappointing anybody. That's just being human. Whatever. It's, I atone in the service that Jews do on that day when they're fasting, totally fasting, no water, no nothing. We literally pound our breasts, chests, whatever, with a fist, bang, bang, as we recite all of the sins that we have committed. And you do it as a group. And, there's sins that you bang yourself for that I'm thinking in the back of my head, I didn't do that. What? I didn't do that. I did most of the rest of these things, but I'll be damned if I did that one. It's powerful stuff. It really is. When the fact is that most of the stuff you've done in the last year, you've done, you nice person, you've done it. Oh God. So just back for a second to this horror of what Merrick Garland went through yesterday. It was so appalling. And I mean, if you wanted to try to explain to somebody about how totally dysfunctional our government is now, you need only, and how partisan, how split, how one side deals in just fabrications and outright fantasies. This would have been a good place to plop somebody down and say, here, look at this. It was appalling. Ruth Marcus, writing in the Washington Post, said, explains it this way: it's no mystery what's going on here. The more Republicans smear Merrick Garland, which is all they were doing, it was just outrageous, smear Merrick Garland, the chief law enforcement officer of the nation. And the more they smear him and his agents and his prosecutors and the whole Justice Department, the more they repeat it, the more they get their fallacious sound bites on the news. And don't worry, the Murdochs will be sure it's on their news. The more people believe that what they're hearing must be true, must be credible. And so the Republicans set up this perfect little cynical reality that we now suffer in. They use the results of sowing this mistrust in the Justice Department. They then turn around and lecture and excoriate Garland about the fact that Americans don't trust his Justice Department. They create it. It's the same as they do with let's make government let's starve it so that it cannot function. And then we will point and say, look at that. The government doesn't function. It was an incredible display. And yeah, it's hard, a reaction is, anger, fear, rage, sense of what can I do or what's going to happen or whatever. But more and more, my reaction is one of my fists clenching, which means I want to fight. I want to fight these sons of bitches. They are, if you want an enemy, these MAGA Republicans, these neo-fascists are as wondrously, appallingly hateful an enemy as anyone could hope to have. Dangerous. Boy, are they dangerous. Hey, I'm going to ease things up just for a second. Oh, no, I won't. Wait. Whoa. How many times have I interrupted myself? So, I just want to, because I have not talked about it, and I just want to clarify that they got nothing, the Republicans, nothing. This was all about tarring Merrick Garland and tarring Hunter Biden as like the worst human on earth and the gravest outrage and threat to our country. It's laughable. It would be laughable if it weren't so. And the reason they can do this is because Americans vote for Republicans and give them control of an entire branch of our government. You want to look at where the problem is? It's the people. So anyway, Hunter Biden, this hapless, sad soul, He doesn't strike me as a venal, nasty person. He strikes me as a damaged and weak person, someone who grew up suffering great loss, mom and sister dying in the car crash that he almost died in, and then seeing his brother become like a golden boy, which left him, I guess, with the position of being the not golden boy. I don't know. He was always in Bo's shadow. Who knows what the problems are? But this is not some evil, horrible man. He's a damaged, like who ain't? He's a damaged man. And the odd thing is about this charge, and I really don't get it, that he's been charged in a way that almost nobody with his history, which means no criminal history at all, would be charged. He's charged as if he were a convicted felon who illegally possessed a gun, or who committed a violent crime. And if there were prosecutions regularly for lying to a gun dealer, well, I mean, the courts would be overwhelmed. This is odd. And while charges of illegal firearms possession, which is one of the charges against him, because he lied, so it was illegal that he had the gun, which he never used. But they are most often used as sort of an add-on in a case where somebody's being charged with a lot of things. So at least one charge will maybe go through and there will be a conviction. It's a bullshit charge. I feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for his dad, who he's got this one surviving son, and I don't know. Anyway, just so you know, I mean, all people you interview who are in law enforcement or were in law enforcement will say that just bringing the charges that have been brought against him is way out of the ordinary. And there are the Republicans screaming at Merrick Garland, whose Justice Department brought the charges. You would think they should. Here is what they want. It's beyond belief. So, I think I'm done now. I saw something on that Nextdoor app that I could have written myself. Well, I couldn't have, because this person is really suffering. But I know the issue, and I've thought of bringing this up many times, believe me. And I'm so glad that this guy posted this. And it turns out the guy who posted it is somebody who on occasion listens to this very show. Michael from Polish Hill, Michael from the Cynics. And I'll read you what he I feel for you. Michael, if you're out there, I feel for you, buddy. Man. Here's what he wrote. And I want to talk about this because a lot of nice, good, well-meaning people who are unaware of what they're doing to their neighbors. And I hope this wakes up. If there's any of you who are doing this too, I hope it wakes you up. Michael wrote in his usual cynical voice, "It's really nice that my neighbor has installed stadium lighting in their backyard that brightly illuminates my backyard and porch, my next door neighbor's backyard and porch, my bedroom, my bathroom through the windows. It's kind of like being in jail, never a second of darkness. It's on all night, 7 days a week. There has always been a city street light there, which is fine and should be sufficient. I love city living, and I realize that light pollution is unavoidable. But in this part of the city, I used to get to see some stars at night. Why would someone have their whole immediate area lit up like a football game when they're not even awake?" Okay. Now, I have to say, this is a problem. Here's my hope that his neighbor is, because Americans are told to be scared all the time and are told to make your home secure. One of the ways you do that, you light the place up. You have these, security lighting, so that no one in their right mind, and because then you have like the cameras trained. But lighting has changed so much in the last, 10 years. And when you go to buy a light bulb, odds are you don't really have a clue how bright it's going to be, no matter what the wattage or whatever it says. We're all flying blind in large part now. And we tend, and people unknowingly put light bulbs in to secure their property that are not, they're not pointed correctly. And they might blind you if you turn onto the street and get one right in the face. They might, as in this case, shine into your neighbor's bathroom, his bedroom, his backyard, so that he can never enjoy the night. And I have dealt with that in my neighborhood, and I have worried that one of my lights is perhaps annoying a neighbor. This was years ago, and I finally saw the neighbor, and I said, is that security light, and it was in my backyard, has that security light? And he said, well, maybe you could just tone it down. And I thought, oh, wow. I unscrewed it. I thought to myself, hey, you really need to light up your backyard at night? I don't think so. And the other thing is, it just screws up everything. It screws up the birds. It's just a bad idea. So I'm just saying to you, think about the exterior lighting you have. Think about if it's really necessary. Think about if it could be a much, much lower wattage. Think about if it's properly positioned. Think who you might be really annoying that lives next door or across the street. And think if there's a possibility that you don't need to be lit up as you are. I mean, it could. I have one neighbor who put in, now this is better because it's not on all the time, a motion detector. Light. So it only goes on if somebody gets a little too close. Bang! They're in the, please lights are on them. Well, I had a neighbor who did that. And it was so sensitive that as I walked by their house in the dark, walking my dog at night, enjoying a quiet and the quiet and dark of the evening, bang, that light would come on. And I'd feel like it was startling always, unwelcome always. I wasn't on their property. I was on a public sidewalk. So I just I've been meaning, this is a pet peeve of mine. And I'm also aware, since I have been a violator and a violatee, that I think most people are clueless, are just unaware when they do this. There's a sweet lady who lives in my neighborhood who just, I don't know if she got a new light bulb or she just installed this, but it's blinding and is lighting up the entire part of her street. I don't know what it's doing for her. And these things are, you don't want to start a fight about it, but I think anyone who's not a total jerk would be open to switching out a light bulb, toning things down. But I feel for Michael. And when I saw that, I thought, oh man, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. This light pollution that we're doing is just it's just nuts. You have a beautiful tree. You want people to see your beautiful tree. So you have lights that just show it off, right? You put a light at the base of it. This is not about security. It's look at this beautiful tree. Now, I appreciate that. But again, those lights are pointing straight up into the air and they're messing with birds. I don't know. I just think our priorities are all screwed up. Or you could have it timed so that, look at my beautiful tree from sundown to 10. Yeah. And then it's going off. I don't know. So there was that. I have I've come across a few things that I also wanted to share with you, and I'm very late doing it. It's been some of these are related criminal justice issues, and I understand that our sure to be nasty race for Allegheny County District Attorney, which we will vote on in November, is starting up, and it started up with Stephen Zappala, the current holder of that job, who thinks he owns that job, who got pummeled in the Democratic primary, running instead as a Republican, which is he's better suited to run as. And he's put out a nasty ad suggesting that if we elect the guy I hope we elect, Dugan, that the streets will run red with the blood of innocents. I mean, I'm slightly exaggerating. Criminals will roam the streets. They'll open the doors of the jailhouse. So that's the scare campaign that Zappala will run and is running. And it could be very effective because we Americans are a scared bunch. and works for the Republicans very well. But I've been looking at a lot of these kinds of issues, and I didn't do a shout out to the state of Illinois, which has done something that no other state has done. And I tip my hat to them. And I hope and I suspect it will work. It will show that this is a better way. Illinois, I think last week, became the first state in this country to completely abolish cash bail. I have said so many times, I can't bear even looking at that jail we built on the riverfront, knowing that it houses mostly black men who have not been convicted. Their crime is they don't have the money that a richer person has to keep them out of jail until their trial. Bail. A system that operates so disproportionately to harm those with the least and advantage those with money is abhorrent. Well, Illinois is the first. And it was challenged. It was passed by their legislature. It was signed by their governor, I believe. It was challenged. It went to their Supreme Court, and their Supreme Court said it's constitutional. So, without cash bail, it is up to the judge then to decide if a defendant can be released before their trial, simply based on whether they pose an obvious threat to the community. Now, this means a lot of people that had the money before might be retained. And those, okay, if you're, whatever. Now, it means I get a little nervous about the discretion of judges, because there's some wonderful judges out there and there's some horrible judges out there. People die in our jail having been convicted of nothing. They die while waiting for their court hearing. And then guess what? Their mourning families sue. And who wouldn't? For a wrongful death. And that the taxpayers end up paying out. So there are also just ridiculous economic costs of detaining people in this way. You get a person, they, let's say, shoplifted something, who knows? They're in court, bail is set at $500 or $1,000. They don't have it. They shoplifted. They got no money to buy stuff. They shoplifted. And so they go to jail, awaiting trial. That could be months and months and months. What happens? They lose their job. Their families lose what income they had. Who's responsible for any children that might be left behind? And I mean, this so clearly harms the poorest people. And it's got to stop. my hat is off to Illinois for this. And this is also the kind of thing that will play into the DA race here, because Dugan, I'm sure, supports this kind of effort. I in some way, and I'm sure Zappala does not, because he's an old school punitive type. And in that regard, Pittsburgh City Paper has a very interesting report out, which shows that probation violations is a huge populator of that jail. So somebody who has been convicted, has done their time, and then they screw up on a probation, and boy, probation. You can't imagine how people can be just tortured when they're on probation. You miss a meeting you were supposed to attend, you're back in jail. Anyway, a report has been done that shows that Allegheny County's Black residents, especially Black men, are vastly overrepresented among those sentenced to probation. Black men make up about 6.5% of the population in this county. They make up 42% of those being supervised by probation officers. And compared to white defendants, Black defendants are also much more likely to receive longer probation sentences, have their probation revoked, and incarcerated rather than probation. So, this is shocking too. Yeah. And what happens? A guy, our system is insane. So let's say a guy does shoplift, okay? And he ends up doing time before his trial because he can't afford the cash bail. And then he gets convicted and he does a little more time, retail theft. And then he serves his time and he's saddled with probation and a probation officer. And because he shoplifted, he is ordered by the court to pay restitution to the people he stole from. And I got to tell you, usually they can't pay restitution. And that can be what? A probation violation if you don't pay. So you end right back in the hoosgow. And you know what? You stole at a Walmart, at a Rite Aid, at a Giant Eagle. Guess what? They're not missing the money. They're not missing the stuff. They don't need your restitution. They carry insurance to cover retail theft. So it is simply punitive. It's nonsensical, to quote one of the people who authored this report. It just drains resources from communities. It keeps them destabilized. It makes things worse. One of the biggest drivers of incarceration in this county is probation detainers. That's something a judge orders when somebody has violated the terms of their probation. And 1/3 of the people in that jail down there, can't tell where I'm pointing, but I'm pointing in the right direction. 1/3 of them are there on probation detainers. In other words, they haven't committed a crime. They have, in fact, done their time for the crime, and they are back, maybe because they couldn't make the restitution payment, maybe because they missed a meeting. I don't know. Actually, there are more people sitting there on probation detainers than there are people sitting there because they couldn't post cash bail. And the fact is, they're probably the people who can't post the cash bail and back in there later on a probation detainer. Last year, a group filed a class action lawsuit against 3 Allegheny County judges. And why aren't their names in this? Please find out. Who are just egregious imprisoners using probation detainers to throw people back into jail. One of the people they threw back in died last year while he was in there. He was 26 years old. One of the judges, only judge I'm seeing named here is not surprising. It's Anthony Mariani, who is a son of a bitch. Also, Jill Rangos, who's the administrative judge. Maybe that's why she was, I don't know. And Kelly Bigley, Judge Kelly Bigley. And I don't know what happened to that. But see, these are issues that, most people pay no attention to. These are issues that poor people in this country, and certainly here in Allegheny County, are very well versed in, because they've seen how nasty, how cruel, how punitive our so-called justice system is, how weighted against them. We see these poor people in shackles, but there are invisible shackles and handcuffs put on them all the time by the system. I credit City Paper for this piece, specifically Rachel Wilkinson. Good job. It's outrageous. I'm sorry. Blah! Okay. I haven't said anything about the auto strike. Good God. I'll just put this in. The auto companies are, as usual, what do companies do if their union goes on strike? We don't have the money. These are outrageous demands. We don't have the money. It's not that they don't have the money. They don't want to share the money. When the financial crisis, remember that, 2007, 2008, when that jeopardized the automakers, what happened to them? They got bailed out, did they not? And the union agreed to unbelievable, they gave back. They said, okay, all right, okay, we'll forego our annual cost of living adjustment. We'll let you do a 2-tier wage structure, which kills the union. Which means that the older people will be on the old schedule. The newer hires will be making a lot less. Well, guess what? Today, 2023, and this might surprise some of you, the starting wage in our auto industry, the starting wage is $18 an hour. Oh, $18.04, excuse me, an hour. Which, just to put it in perspective, is lower than the starting wage was in 2007, when the taxpayers bailed these SOBs out and the union gave back their cost of living adjustments and allowed the two-tier system. In 2007, an entering first-time employee was being paid almost $20 an hour. And now it's $18 an hour. And meanwhile, the automakers have rebounded very well. I mean, they're making money hand over fist. The auto workers? It's really something. The big three automakers, the ones being struck, made in just the first half of this year, their profits, $21 billion in the first 6 months. And over the last decade, when their workers just saw their earnings keep going down, 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 over the last decade, the big three profited by, well, let's call it what it is, $250 billion. They were spending billions on stock buybacks. They are spending God knows what on top executives' pay, but they can't find the money to pay the people who make the product, labor. And I just want to say, we're probably going to be seeing a lot of strikes, as we right now are. And we need to stick with these workers because they have been and are being screwed. And you wonder why people can't afford homes anymore. Young people can't this, that, and the other thing. This is part of it. Wages. And this will strengthen unions. And when unions are strong, you know what happens? The economy is strong. When unions are strong, the middle class is strong. We barely have one. Oh, whose side are you on? It's an easy call. Two other little things. I saw something really nice about a local corporation that has a great product, and I hear pays their people well, and is centered here in East Liberty. What do you mean my connection isn't private? And I'm talking about Duolingo. So Duolingo, let me find it. I gotta get here in another way. It has used its great wealth, and its owner has become a billionaire. It has used its great wealth to help the community that it lives in. And so they have pledged to give yearly grants to preschools in this East End area in which they live. They have pledged $1 million a year to early childhood care and education. And they set up a very stringent program that certain criteria had to be met. So they're not just throwing this at anybody. And then they selected, they vetted all of these potential recipients, and they recently announced that these places will receive these grants. And one of them is the preschool my son went to, which was a wonderful place. But those getting them are Brightside Academy Early Education in East Liberty, Child's Way, Davis Family Child Care, Eastminster Child Care, Homewood Brushton Y, Hope Academy, by Hosanna House, McCoy's Learning Center, Mount Ararat Early Childhood Development Center. All of those will be helped by Duolingo. And they really create, they're serious about this stuff, so they don't just do it and then disappear. So they have a number of other community-based social impact programs. They support a lot of other places around. So I just think that's good news. Glad to hear it. That's a good corporate member of a community. And I thank him. And a follow-up to this news that came out the other day of Carnegie Museum holding on to one of the sketches, I think it's a sketch, of this expressionist artist, Scheel, I think it's pronounced. And that work and a whole ton more belonged to a guy named Fritz Grunbaum, who the Nazis stuck in Dachau and killed. And then they stole his prodigious art collection. So it just seems pretty obvious that anybody holding any of his art, what was known to be his art collection, is holding stolen goods. And yesterday, the DA in New York City, a guy whose name you'll recognize because he's also the one going after Donald Trump, Alvin Bragg, held a ceremony in which a whole bunch of these paintings were turned over to the owner's grandchildren, to the rightful owners. And it was amazing who held them. A lot of major museums held them. Private collectors held them. One of the funny things is one of the collectors who held these was a guy named Ronald Lauder, who is president of the World Jewish Congress and who also is a longtime advocate of restitution to Holocaust survivors' families. And he didn't even know he was holding on to some of the loot, which he happily gave back. But the piece here at the Carnegie is not part of what happened yesterday. They are, that is still being contested, I believe. The Carnegie, it says here at the end of this piece, I think it was in the New York Times, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh, and this museum at Oberlin College are currently facing lawsuits from this family in federal court. And while they've put out statements saying we will cooperate fully, the fact is they believe they're sticking to their guns. they're going to make the courts decide if they have to give them back, which I find disgusting. They say they believe they have good title to their works. How could you have good title to works that are known to be from the collection of Holocaust murder victim, whose collection was pretty well, I mean, it was known. Incredible. I just wanted to get that a little more. I think I've got that right. And I wish that the Carnegie and these others would just do the right thing. People are not beating down your doors to see that painting. And it doesn't belong to you. It was pillaged by the murderous Nazis. We got our own Nazis to deal with now. Okay, that's it. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Again, Monday I'll be being Jewish, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Okay? Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.